Oli Olis, welcome to The Double Face, a true crime podcast. I'm Jose.
Hi guys, I'm Melissa.
So today, I'm so sorry, but my voice is going to sound a little off. It's because my tonsils are really swollen. I don't know if it's the allergies or whatever it is, but they're really, really swollen. So I normally can yell at Melissa and I can't today. So do you have anything about the weekend?
No, I just worked again. Did you?
I work daily, but I think it's just this sickness. It's not like a contagious anything. It's just my tonsils.
I can hear it.
And I'm going to have to take gulps of my own saliva or the water. So if you hear me do that, I'm so sorry. Okay, but enough about
that. Did it?
What?
Did I say, did that hurt?
No.
Did that? Oh, I was like, ooh.
No. Okay, so here we go. We have another man who was able to deviously maneuver his way from city to city, leaving destruction behind and even being on dating sites. He reigned so much terror that along his murder spree, today we're talking about Rodney Alcala, also known as the dating show killer. You know, this is something that her and I kind of hit a couple bumps, or at least I know I did, is when I was looking him up and I would put Rodney Alcala, it wouldn't show up, but the dating show killer would show up.
Oh, okay.
And which was confusing to me until I realized, oh, that's why, because it's one of the same. So Rodney Alcala was born in San Antonio, Texas in 1973 at the age of 17. So same city where we live in.
Right. I was kind of, so when we were discussing what the next topic or who the next person would be, and you mentioned this name, and I kind of did like just a brief research. I was like, from San Antonio, Texas, it really. Then it got me to where, like, why did he leave San Antonio? Where did it go from there?
Well, that's good transition here. Well, at the age of 17, he was enlisted from the Army, but the Army had him accused of sexual misconduct and a nervous breakdown. But honestly, so of course they discharged him. I honestly think the discharge was based on the breakdown, but the breakdown is because he was good at changing on the spot. And you'll see why. So on September 25th, 1968, Tally Shapiro, who was only 8 years old, who lives in Los Angeles, one day Tally is headed to school, and early in the morning, a man pulls up asking if she would like a ride. Thankfully, they raised her correctly, and she said, no, it's all right. No, thank you, because her parents had told her, like, stranger, danger, yes. Don't get on rides, don't do anything with a stranger.
Mind you, like, since we just talked about Ted Bundy, all of this was going on because his cases were coming out. So I feel like I think people were on alert at this point. It kind of got me when we were looking at dates and stuff like that. I was like, oh, the Ted Bundy situation was happening. So people were on alert now. So
we'll talk about it later in there, but there was a spree in the 70s of murderous serial killers. The podcast isn't just about serial killers, but it just happens to be that they're on the same spree around the same years.
It boggled my mind, for sure.
Yeah, me too. So she says, of course, no. Then he says, that's all right. He says to her, it's okay. I know your parents. They sent me. He said to send you a ride. And then he said, and I also want to show you a photo, a really beautiful photo. He's all, get in. And it's so weird. You're never prepared to tell your kids every single thing. You can experience that. I have no idea. But you can never prepare them for every single answer. And Tally was not expecting, oh, I know your parents. They send me. So just get in the car. So she gets in the car. She gets in the car. He persuades her. Mind you, he persuades adults later. So don't put too much, because she's a child. She's 8 years old. So then he drives off. Luckily, a man saw all this happening, just a bystander, a good Samaritan, saw this going on and started to follow this man. I mean, he follows him. He follows him all the way to the apartment. And finally, when he takes, I guess Tally walks up with him. Who knows how Tally was feeling at the time or what she was emotionally going through, because she's got to walk into an apartment complex and knowing she's got to be at school. Why are they in there? He must have told her, like, your parents are here. They told me to bring you over here, something. Well, anyway, so the guy then turns around, the Good Samaritan turns around, goes to the first payphone. And of course, there wasn't cell phones at the time. But so he goes to the payphone, calls the police and says, hey, this is exactly what's going on. This is what's happening. I saw this man pick up a little girl at this apartment complex. This is the apartment number.
Yeah.
This is where this is where Detective Chris Camacho is the first one to show up. He gets there in a lickety split. They didn't say, I couldn't find it, if he was by himself or they sent another officer.
I think he might have been by himself. And then I think later,
they show up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like shortly after he was already in there. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. He makes his way to the apartment and, of course, knocks. And he's knocking and knocking. And he states, police, LAPD, open the door. Well, Rodney Alcala gets to the door, puts on, I guess, a towel around him to make it seem like he was just taking a shower. So he tells Detective Camacho, he says, oh, I'm so sorry. It took me so long because I was in the shower. Could you just give me a few seconds? Let me just change. And the officer, Camacho, says in an interview, in 48 hours,
yeah,
he says, I instinctually knew that there's something wrong with this. But 10 seconds, it's 10 seconds. So he told him, I'll give you 10 seconds. But in 10 seconds, I'm kicking this door open and you better be at this door. And he's like, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. He kicks that door open because he's not answering. He goes to the door and immediately, as soon as he opens the door, he sees, and trigger warning, if this is too much, fast forward about 30 seconds. He opens the door and there is a little, of course, Tally on the floor, in the kitchen floor, and her body is just blood all over, covered of blood. Right next to her is the steel pole that was, I guess he used to beat her. And on top of it, I guess, by the looks of her shoes, it looked like she had taken them off uncomfortably, or she quickly took them off. It didn't look like they were placed. You know when somebody places her shoes just to be careful? She didn't place them. It looks like it was in a rush. Her little white shoes were just so close to them. I don't know when I want to cry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. No, oh shit. I'm so sorry. I don't know, maybe I'm just being sensitive. I'm so sorry. I saw it. It didn't affect me like that. But now that I'm saying it out loud, anyway. So he goes to her. Detective Camacho goes to her, puts his pulse on her and sees to see if she has anything. And he doesn't feel a pulse. So immediately he's like, oh, okay, I've got to catch him. So he goes from room to room to see where he is. Yeah. At the same time, I guess police are already there at this point.
Because it becomes a little bit of a chaos. Yeah. Just a little bit. They're looking for him, and then they're trying to see, oh my God, can she be saved? Can she not be saved?
Correct. And so he turns around because as he's looking for Rodney, he turns around because he hears like a gargling noise coming from Tally. And immediately his attention is on her. She survived. Let's keep her. Let's try to save her. So, of course, he goes and tends to her and says, call 911, calls whatever, or get us an ambulance, so forth. Which I'm assuming he's already done because he saw her.
Yes.
So I'm sure his reaction is to do that. Well, anyway, he looks at her, he hears her. They're trying, it's a little chaotic. But finally, Captain Camacho says, by the time they realize, after they've already assisted her and said, okay, somebody's holding her, somebody's got her.
Yes.
Let me go find him. He escapes. And this is the horrible thing, is that he was so close to getting caught at that very moment. But she does survive. Let me just tell you that. She survives because they rush her back to the hospital, of course. They take care of her. They tried and find information while they're already in there. Mind you, it's not they're all working together, so we don't know exactly which detective is looking for what, because they can't find him. They're trying to say, okay, let's go look to see what exactly we can find.
Yeah.
Exactly. So inside the house, they do find professional photography equipment. And on top of that, this huge array of photos, young girls just all over, just sitting there. But next to those photos is his ID.
It's a UCLA student ID.
But it has his name, Rodney Alcala. So luckily, they have something to go off of. So detectives don't skip a beat. They're like, let's go. Let's go back to the school. Let's find some information. Let's see what we can do. But they noticed that they interviewed the teacher. They interview the instructors, they interview the students, and they're like, oh no, he's such a sweetheart.
Yeah.
This is one thing that, like the other ones, they were able to charm. This is a big thing that notes you. No matter even how disgusting you are, as long as you can charm people, people will not think twice about you.
Yeah.
And who was the first one that we did on, remember he smelled, but...
Fred West.
Fred West smelled. But he was a charmer, and he was able to get through whatever, all this. So what I'm trying to say is,
it's a constant, like, so far in the last 3, they're all charmers.
They're all charmers. And of course, the other one. Okay. So let's fast forward just a little bit. So in 1971, LAPD gets a call from New Hampshire PD, and they stated that they got Rodney in custody. The only way they caught him was that 2 girls went to the post office and saw a poster that said wanted. On that was Rodney. And that's how they went back to their professor and were like, hey, this is something scary. I don't know what's going on. We need to call the police. So they do. They call the police, and that's how they get a hold of him. And you know what the scary part of this was? Is that he was their counselor, those 2 girls.
Yes.
He was their counselor for an all-girls summer camp. Isn't that chilling? This is the 70s, 60s, 70s. So, of course, they're able to get away with it. Like, you can literally go to another city and just change your name.
Yes, that's how easy it was, because you'll learn that later.
You don't need IDs. Just say who you are. So Rodney was actually attending school in New York and under the name of John Berger. And in the same year of June 1971, his next victim was Cornelia Michael Creeley, 23-year-old flight attendant. So her boyfriend was he had gone and visited her, but one day he was like, you know what, I'm going to go visit her, because they had just moved into this apartment complex, and they're 2 young flight attendants. So he goes and knocks at the door. He buzzes it, nothing, knocks, nothing. And he's like, the door's locked, which is weird. I thought that was a weird comment.
Because I think they were either living together or something of the nature of her staying with him. Meanwhile, she was getting her new apartment. I think that's what was happening. So I think that's might have been why he was kind of thrown off.
No, well, he was only thrown off because the door was locked. He was trying to get in.
So it wasn't his apartment?
No, it wasn't. It was theirs.
Okay.
So it's like every other flight. I used to be a flight attendant.
Okay.
You room with another flight attendant. So then you have a big space. Anyway.
Now it makes sense.
So that's what the 2 girls were doing. And he went to go visit, but he was like, the door's locked. I don't know what to do. So anyway, then he goes. So it doesn't say past that. I'm assuming that they call the police. But on this one, Cornelia was stripped naked and was choked with a nylon stocking. He also left a bite mark on her breast, and she also was gagged. At the same time, the Los Angeles Police Department wants to charge Rodney for his brutal actions with Tali. But the only thing is, Tali's family was, I can't even imagine going through that heartache or that trauma and then trying to protect your daughter. So what they did is they left. They went to Mexico. It doesn't say what part of Mexico, but they left to Mexico and want nothing to do with California anymore. They were like, I'm done. So they're trying, which is understandable. When the police department approaches the family about the court appearances for Rodney's hearing, they say an absolute, an unequivocal no. I don't think so. And I can see from both perspectives, but I can see from the family that they're like, you should have enough. You saw the tapes, you saw the pictures, you have everything that shows you. You have the witnesses, you have everything. You don't need us. You don't need to put this little girl through trauma again, because he would have to see him.
Mm-hmm. She would have to testify.
She would have to testify. So because she couldn't, as soon as Rodney gets there, they give him a deal. Mm-hmm. And the deal was child molestation. Mm-hmm. Child molestation for brutally almost murdering a child, an 8-year-old girl. You gave child molestation. You're going to get frustrated throughout this storyline because you're going to see this.
The justice system.
The justice system just fuck up over and over and over. So you'll see what we're referring to. Sorry, what we're referring to. I have too many. Okay, so I trust me. When I was like looking at this and watching this and doing all this research, I almost fucking screamed.
Frustrated. I was like,
"Are you fucking?" It was just. Now the only thing that they did with this is that they gave him a sentence of 1 year to 99 due to rehabilitation. Right? Okay. What that means is that he can do indefinite sentence, but depending on how fast he rehabilitates. October 1974, only a few months after, 34 months to be exact, after he's rehabilitated because he's convinced counselors and the board, the parole board, that he's good. Mm-hmm. He's good. Let's get Rodney out of here. He's out.
2 months.
2 months. 2 months. After he's released, he does what he normally does. He drives. He meets up with a young girl, and the first thing I'm assuming he's gonna do is convince her that, hey, let's take a picture. You're really beautiful. I don't know.
I'm a professional photographer.
Yes, just convincing these young girls. So Julie, he offers Julie a ride. Julie says yes. So they drive to the beach. He then gives her weed. He smokes a weed. And then immediately after that, he forces a kiss on her. Luckily, Julie, you got some saints, honey. Luckily, right after that, a police officer arrives and Julie, we say survives because it could have happened to you. Mm-hmm. So she survives for the fact that, I don't know if they were chasing him, how they knew I don't know if somebody saw.
Because she's also only 13 years old, so to be with a man at that age getting high could have been a warning or a sign where the cops are like, this doesn't look right. It doesn't say. We're just assuming that.
It doesn't say, but we're just assuming that. Yeah. Well, since he went against the parole rules, which meaning he was supposed to stay away from young girls and drugs. And he went right back to prison. Please don't get excited. He only went to prison for 3 years. We say only because for what he did in the amount of time that he was out, only was not enough. So in 1977, he's released because that indefinite sentencing law. And so he makes his way to New York City.
And that's that his parole officer allowed it to happen on top of that.
It's like everybody in the system just kept fucking it up. Mm-hmm. Well, he makes his way to New York City. He arrives there, and he meets 23-year-old musician Elena Hoover. And this wasn't just any girl. Mm-hmm. Elena Hoover was someone whose father owned Cyril. It was a hotel.
I was gonna say, is it a nightclub or a hotel?
No, it was a hotel. But at the same, even her godfathers were Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin. Like it's a big deal. Like
in that time, they were pretty big.
And she's a musician herself, so it was just in her nature. Well, I think they connected because if you look aesthetically, Rodney Alcala in his youth looked young and artistic, and if he wasn't an asshole, I think he could have like given you artsy vibes.
Yeah, and he also carried a camera with him, so there's that too.
Oh yeah, he always carried a camera.
So there is that, give that vibe of like, oh, I'm a photographer, I can, do photo shoots for you guys and so on and so forth, because he uses that a lot.
Oh, keep this in mind that it feels like every single murderer keeps the same habit of not changing their story, just doing the exact same thing over and over because it works for them. So I don't want to get too into it, but the best friend gets a call one day, which is Ellen Hoover's best friend from her mother. And her mother's like, hey, have you seen Ellen? It's been a while. I haven't heard from her. I miss her. And she's like, no. I don't know how long the time span was. She goes, no, I haven't heard from her. What do you mean? And they're all trying to find her. They're searching for her. Mind you, she's a well-known person or her family is. So, of course, they're going to search for her.
Yeah, because it becomes a big deal. It's kind of all over the news at that time. I mean, not all over the news, but enough news media to get like, okay, where is this girl at?
So they go to Ellen's house and they go and see what they can find, if anything. Luckily, Ellen put on her calendar that she was going to meet up with David Berger. John Berger. I'm sorry, David. John Berger. I know.
Sorry, guys.
She said yes.
And I was like, wait, no.
You looked at me real sincere too.
And I was like, wait, we're sorry, guys.
Sorry.
I'm really into the details and I'm reading, but I was like not paying attention. Sorry.
My tonsils. Well, so anyway, he says John Berger. Well, they start looking to see if they can find information from the school or anything like that. So while he's making he's doing this, running this terror, he is now making his way back to LA because, of course, like Melissa mentioned, it's getting really hot. And he knows it's getting hot, so he's got to get out of town. So he, at the same time, he goes back to LA, but at the time, he does meet up with a woman from Texas, Christine Ruth, Thornton, who is traveling with her boyfriend on the way to Montana. She's also pregnant at the same time.
Yeah, she's 6 months pregnant.
We don't know why until later as to why, but we'll get into it later.
Yeah.
Just remember that. Shortly after that, Rodney makes his way back to LA. He even gets a job with the LA Times as a typesetter, even though he was just a registered sex offender. At the same time, and nobody looked it up. Nobody cared to say, you know what? Let's do a little bit of background check. No. He was able to work for LA Times. In 1978, Alcala gets picked to be on a dating show. Where you've ever seen a dating show? Back in the day, there was like a partition.
Yes.
A wall partition, right? So the girls on one side and 3 guys are on the other side. And the girl's being flirty. She also has like a theater background, and she's asking him, who are you? Simple questions. Yeah. Of course, there's sexual innuendos for adults. And he mentioned something like, oh, they call me the banana, which means, I would have picked.
This is gross.
I know, I would have picked him too.
The sexual innuendos at that time.
And not only on top of that,
it's
gross.
Dude, it's gross. It's so cringy. I was like, oh.
No, you know what's the weird part is that she says something to him, and I don't remember the response right now, but he says, I like, what's the best, day or nighttime? He's all, at night.
Also, yeah, and I was like, ew.
He does that. Is it gnarls at her?
Yeah.
Like, it's so eerily creepy.
Gross. Yeah.
Well, the pendeja chooses him and says, you know what? That girl, that banana.
Like so much fun.
She's like, I do love bananas. She does say that, and she chooses him. I just want to say, luckily, her intuition kicked in. The show ended. They went to the back. They talked because they got to set up the date now. So then there's another, because the shows would do this where they would want what happened after the show.
Yeah. Because they're giving them like a date and then like somewhere else to go.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Correct. And so she says to producers, I don't want to date. After talking to him, he's really creepy.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely don't want to date with him. So she says no to him.
Yeah.
Thankfully, she says no. Had she, though, I think like this. Had she, and he did unalive her,
mm-hmm.
would they immediately know that it was him? Because he was just on the show.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Maybe it would have quickly gotten her out. But nonetheless, not that I'm saying she should have died. I'm just saying...
What could have happened.
Could have happened,
yeah.
but it didn't. That did sound horrible. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
I want to mention that BT... Sorry, I know that's horrible.
I'm just messing with him.
So I want to mention that BTK and the son of Sam was also murdering at the same time. So Rodney then made he's already back in LA, right? And it's the spring of 1979 at the beach. There's a 12-year-old Robin Samso. Robin Samso and her best friend, Bridget, head to the beach one day. And they're like minding their business. They're like, Mom, I've got to go do ballet practice. Before we go to ballet practice, I'm going to go to the beach. Or best friend's like, girl, I got you. Let's go. So they head to the beach. As soon as they get into the beach, Ronnie's with his camera. And the best friend, they interviewed her on 48 hours. Mm-hmm. And she says, it's almost like he honed in on us quickly on us. And he asked, can I take a picture of you? You know, I do this, I do that. Whatever he said. Well, Robin Samso immediately says, yes, sure. The best friend was like, okay. Well, they're having a conversation. Luckily, Robin's neighbor sees this interaction, walks up to Rodney and the two girls and says, is everything okay here? Thank God there's somebody who's nosy and did their job. He goes up to them and Rodney puts his head down, looks at his camera the entire time and walks away, but angrily walks away. He disappears. They don't think twice about this, right? So now Robin and Bridget are hanging out. And Robin, of course, remember, she's got to get back to her ballet practice. So she's like, hey, I love you, but I got to go. She's like, you know what? Take my bike. That's a best friend. Mm-hmm. Bridget says, take my bike. Don't stop. Just keep going. She's like, okay, go. She takes her bike and never seen it ever again. And I think this is the heartbreaking part, is that everybody did what they were supposed to. The way they do find her was a fire crew happened to be in the area, which is about 40 miles where she was last seen. And she was found with no hair, just bones. Mm-hmm. And they, of course, had to tell, look, the crew found it, didn't understand it. Her bones are there. There's still blood. There's still skin fragments. Like they can pull off bone fragments and they can pull off the blood from there. Mm-hmm. So they're just sitting there. Luckily, somebody was smart enough to grab that, hold it, and leave it there. This will come to play later on. Mm-hmm. Just remember that. He was so easy to find because at the same time, he's living with his mother in Monterey Park, where Robin's body was found. Mind you, her body was found like only a couple of miles from
where he lived?
From where his mother lived.
Oh, wow.
And that's the reason they were able to tie it together. After his arrest, because they do arrest him, mm-hmm. Ronnie's sister then goes and visits Ronnie one day. Thank God that there's parts of them that are so stupid. They don't know that when you go to a prison and you sit down and you pick up the fucking phone, it's being recorded. But thank God.
Yeah.
It plays towards the, like,
what happens next?
Police officers to their benefit.
Yeah.
He goes to she's listening to him and he says to her, hey, I need you to do something for me. And she's like, yeah, of course. Whatever you need, brother. He says, go to Seattle, Washington. Allah. Where? Excuse me? I would have been like, bitch, you better buy my ticket. Seattle, Washington, where he has a storage locker. One thing that the officers that were listening in had not told anyone was that when they went to his house, because you know how it's where his mom lived or where, they saw a storage locker. Didn't think twice about it, but they did.
They found a receipt.
Yes, correct. They found a receipt, but didn't think twice about it. They just noticed that it was there. So they hear the storage locker, and they immediately, they don't skip a beat. They're like, we've got to get there before she does. So,
muy entendida. She was about to go.
Yeah, I believe that she was.
Yeah. Guaranteed.
Look, sometimes you just got to let your brother die. And I think because this situation, he's a muerto. Let him die. Like, it's not funny. We're laughing at the fact that this is so stupid and how they got away with it. Anyway, police officers head to Seattle, Washington. They go to the storage locker, and inside the locker is where they see dozens. I'm not talking about a shit ton of boxes of photos. And in the photos, as they're looking, they're going through it, they're like, wow. But which everybody's, I'm sure, already piecing it together. You understand what he's doing. Mm-hmm. Those are his, what do you call that?
His they like to keep stuff what they've done.
I can't remember the stuff, but yes, they're like keepsakes to kind of play back the memory. That comes to play later on. I'll tell you. I know there's a lot of these, but I promise it all ties together. But as soon as they go through the photos, they go under the photos and they see that there's a bag. And it's this pouch bag that's no more than, 14 in length inches. Maybe it's not big, but it's big enough. They unzip it, and inside that pouch, there's earrings. Different types of earrings, just different types. And so they're like, okay, I think we have something here. So on February 80th, 1980, Rodney went on trial. Thankfully, this time the jury sentenced Rodney to death. They did not skip a beat, but please don't get too excited. They didn't skip a beat. They were like, death, boom. But in this decision, the California State Supreme Court announced that Rodney didn't get a fair trial. So, and I get it. It's not a fair trial, but this situation is different. It's not like you're putting somebody who's not innocent in jail. So the reason that he didn't get a fair trial is because the jury was told about...
they were informed about improperly prior sex crimes is what
which means Tali's situation. Remind you, he already got a sentence for that. When you're on trial for a new hearing that has nothing to do with that one, you can't mention the other ones. That still goes on in the court system. You can't mention it. Well, they did mention it during the trial, so that's why the jury didn't hesitate and said death. Death. So 6 years later, Rodney is trying to get away with it, right? But 6 years later, Rodney is sentenced to death again. Mind you, he's still in prison, luckily. Yes. He can't go into his reign of terror. In 2001, because he does take that extra court date and they tell him, okay, let's go through it again and let's get everybody, and that's why he gets sentenced. In 2001, Rodney and the California State Supreme Court overturns his sentence once again due to the evidence he didn't get to present.
It's a back and forth.
It makes me so fucking mad. What didn't he get to present that you had all that time? What could you not mention? That you didn't murder? What? Híjole, it fires me up. So in New York in 2010, Cornelia Criley and Ellen Hoover, there's a cold case at the same time. Yeah. Detectives were able to charge Rodney for their murders because Rodney left a fingerprint underneath one of the bodies.
That surprised me. I was like, why would you do that? Why would you leave a fingerprint?
But you know what's something that I've noticed about certain people that are on a spree? They sometimes want to get caught.
Yeah.
So
you're
I
right.
can see
Yeah.
that he's going to make that mistake. But he leaves the thumbprint underneath her body, and I guess she falls on top of whatever it is.
Yeah.
He leaves a thumbprint. So they have that, and that's where they were able to charge him. It wasn't enough, though, to indict him. So they're just like, yes, we have the fingerprint. Yes, it matches, but it's not enough. So in order for them to move forward, they would have to wait until the case from Robin Somo, which was still kind of going on at the same time.
Yes.
So Robin Somo they're having to deal with that case. If they don't deal with this case first, they can't move on with the one in New York, no matter what information, because they need to know the sentencing.
Yes.
So during this time, DNA does match, because we're already in the 2000s. So he matches with 3 girls because of the DNA. Jill Barcombe, Georgia Wickstead, and Charlotte Lamb. And, I'm sorry, I said 3, I meant 4. Jill Parento. 4 girls.
DNA
that he automatically pulls up that says he is also attached to these. In a bizarre turn, hijo de Dios, they decided to go on trial for all 5 cases.
Yes.
Mind you, they're finding this in California, right? So they're like, why not go to trial again for all 5? Let's stop what we're doing. Let's get all 5 of these cases. Let's get him now once and for all. We dropped the ball 17 times, but this 18th time, let's go ahead and get him.
Let's get it right.
Let's get it right once.
Yeah.
I understand that this is the 60s, 70s. People are going to make mistakes. But it still goes on. And this is the 2000s. We're in 2024. As a theatric, Alcala was constantly during the trial. He made a spectacle. And you can remember who else did the same thing.
Yep.
Robin Samo's mother, I'm sorry if I'm messing that up. Samo's mother, even had to go on trial because he pulled her up.
Yeah, because he in this trial he's his own lawyer.
Yes.
So he's able to.
If you haven't listened to the ones prior to this, you need to listen to the Ted Bundy one, because he also represented himself. And I feel like these people feel like they're superior to others.
Or they're entitled
No, that they're smarter than you.
Yes.
And anyway, so this is something that Rodney does during the trial, but it gets worse. On his closing statement, Rodney Alcala mentions and plays a song from Alice's Restaurant. Did you hear that?
I heard that. I couldn't hear the lyrics, but I heard some of the song.
Well, that's good you didn't, but I'm going to mention it now.
No, yeah.
So this is the lyrics from that song that he plays during the trial at his closing. And then it went up there, and I shrink. I want to kill. I wanna kill. I want to see blood and gore and guts and things in my teeth. Eat dead, burnt bodies. Kill. And I feel like Ronnie, it was another slap in the fucking face to all his because all the family members that are there.
Now there's 5 families.
5 families that are having to deal with. Luckily, they at least have each other to hone in on one another. Anyway, what a fucking fuck you to them. But anyway, so he goes on. Ronnie requests the fucking nerve. Ronnie, at the very end, says to them, after he's done his closing, he tells them, you know what? I also request for clemency. Which of you don't know what it means? It means mercy. He's asking for mercy. I'm sorry. Am I the only one that's flabbergasted on how ironic that is?
Yeah.
You're asking for clemency, but I'm sure your victims at their dying day were asking for that or more. Please stop it. Please don't touch me. Please don't do this. I have a family. My sister, something. All these girls were crying for their life, but you want clemency. The fucking nerve. And finally, the jury came back with the guilty for Robin Samoa's murder, which means he was convicted of all 5 murders. So then the New York, finally, all this is done, and they're like, murder, death, put him, go, see ya.
5 separate death penalties.
5.
All 5.
So he has no chance of coming out.
Nope.
So at the same time, New York said, that's good for y'all. Congratulations. Now bring his ass over here and let us get hood on his motherfucking ass. And let's take care of him. So now, remember that couple that I told you was driving in Texas?
Yes.
That she was pregnant?
Yes.
Well, Christine Thorpe, just to refresh your memory. Her sister Kathy Thorpe was on 48 Hours, right? She was on 48 Hours. One day in 2013, Kathy's son was watching 48 Hours and saw the episode of Rodney Alcala. Mind you, she don't know, he didn't know, nobody knew who this man was. They just knew he was
other than him being extradited back to New York because he was charged there.
Correct, but this family didn't know him.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, because it was in the news and all of that, because they were watching a show.
Well, the only reason she watched the show is because and it was just on.
Yeah.
It's not like he was watching it because he knew who he was or anything like that. Yeah, it didn't mention that because she says, we didn't know who he was at all. So she happened to watch it. Something instinctually told him to watch it because afterwards, he sends the website to his mother and he says, hey, Mom, there's a photo of girls that this guy, Rodney Alcala, murdered. You want to go through them, see if maybe somebody comes up or you recognize any of them, which was Christine Thorpe, of course, right? So she's going through the photos and going through them. She stops at one, but goes goes back and looks at that. Goes back. The third time, she's like, you know what? This one keeps getting my attention. And it's this girl in this yellow long sleeve, flowy, cute blouse with bell bottoms and open toe sandals. Well, the open toe, she has something distinguished that a lot of people, if you know your family, you know your family. She has a hooked baby toe, which means it hooks over the other toe on top. So it looks like you have a little nub at the end. As she looked at it, she was like, wait, that's Christine. Christine had a little nub like that. That is Christine. And so she says, you know what? Let me go ahead and submit my DNA because I think that I'm connected to it. At the same time that she's connecting everything to this, she sees the DNA in Wyoming. Jeff Sheeman was working on a cold case, right? How the universe, when it works beautifully. He's working on a cold case of a girl's body who was 25 to, I think he said 40. She happened to be pregnant. Were they able to salvage some skin tissue and bone fragments. So with that, they were able to get some DNA. Well, she submitted at the same time. As he submits that, poof, it matches. Immediately, they both get notified. He gets notified first that there's a match. She then gets called and says, hey, we found your sister. Now, mind you, this is already what? Well, 2013 is when she submits the DNA. I don't know the year that by the time he submits, because all that takes time. We don't have the exact date, but with that said, he submits it. She gets the information. She gets a call and she says that's her. It was Rodney. But by this time, he's already got all these death sentences. New York has taken care of him, found him guilty. Because I don't know if I mentioned that.
That's the one where in Manhattan, he's found guilty and they add another 25 years to life.
Correct. Just, because I think we skipped over it. But he did get 25 years to life. So he wasn't being let free at all. So that's something that we want to make clear. They were not going to let him go at this point. But because at least she knew. So let me tell you what happened that day. So the sister did say that Christine and her partner who were going to, I think they were going to Wyoming.
No, so what was happening was they were living in San Antonio, Texas. That is crazy. And she broke up with the boyfriend and she was trying to come back home. And that's where Rodney Alcala finds her because she's hitchhiking. So that's how the story plays out.
Because if you remember,
Yeah.
he was going from New York because it was getting too hot back to LA. And so during that time, he happened to see each other and that they saw each other, and that's where he drove her up and killed her.
Okay, so in September 2016, the prosecutor from Wyoming flies out to interview Rodney Alcala. And he wants to know what happened to Christine Thorpe. And so they do an interview. So when they get to San Quentin, they realize that they moved him. I'm not sure if they get to San Quentin or they moved him from San Quentin to, I'm going to get this wrong. That's where he's at now due to failing health.
Corcoran,
there you go. Corcoran jail. So that's where he's at now. And they said he's still in lock and key. Like they have to go through one cell, through another cell to open this cell. And so he's in this room that looks terrible. Like it's just...
It looks almost like an abandoned building that looked like it had a pink color. And if you didn't know this, is that back then prisons were painted pink to calm and soothe. It was like a mental thing. Yeah. To calm and soothe the jailers. But in one show called Mindhunters, they were like, oh, but this didn't work on him because the paint was gone immediately because they scraped it off and all the fights and arguments.
You could see like the scrapes and paint.
But you can see how bad it's deteriorated. And it's already at this point, he's full of flies. And
there's flies everywhere. It was just the bed and himself. And that is it that was in the room. So when they went in there, they're just like, holy crap, this is a crappy place to be in. So they start doing the interview, and they show him a picture of, it's like a pan out of where the crime scene was at. And they show him, he goes, oh, that's my place. That's what he said to the interviewer, or to the prosecutor and the officer. Because I think there was 2 officers with him as well. And I was just like, ew, how creepy. And then they show him a picture of Christine. And he's like looking at it, and they said that he's tracing her body. And I was like, that's so gross. At this point, he's like, what?
Because he's probably reliving the
he's
past.
reliving,
so
exactly.
That photo isn't doing what you think it's doing for him. It's having him relive that moment. Because he goes over it. He retraces her body. Doesn't really say anything. Retraces her body and then just taps. The taps get harder, and he just stays quiet. So then at that point, the prosecutor and the 2 officers that are with him are like, okay, well, what happened to her? Like, did you kill her? Because they were asking her, did you murder her? And he's like, no, y'all are stupid. I didn't do that. So on and so forth, trying to answer back. And I'm just like, so he finally says, they asked him, was she alive when you left her? And he said, yes. So at that point in time, the prosecutor's like, I charged him with first-degree murder. But he never goes to trial because they're like, why take him out of this room? I'm not going to give him the benefit. He's in the worst condition he can be.
I'm not going to give him the benefit of giving him a trip back to Wyoming. He can stay where he's at. So he doesn't go to trial for that case.
Correct. And on July 24th, 2021, Rodney Alcala finally dies at the age of 77. And may I say, and this is in California. No, not California? Yeah.
He was in California.
Yes. Good fucking riddance. And this is just something that we were going through it. And it seems like to us it's a lot. And we're informing you because we want you to know to be vigilant. You can't tell your kids too much or not enough of don't talk to them. If they say this, give them a secret word, something. Because teaching your kids isn't going to be enough. But hopefully this helps. But with that said, thank you so much. Dame un besito. We got to go.
Bye, guys.
Bye.